Joe Fortenbaugh here for OddsShark to advise you that there are a few things in life more uncomfortable than a giant red zit on top of your eyelid. Not sure why it chose today to show up. Never had one of them before, but it is quite uncomfortable. This, apparently, is the life I have chosen. I hope all of you are doing a lot better than me. Bankroll Busters coming up in just a second, but first I want to start with a betting note. Packers and Giants coming back from London to play this week, no bye. Interesting scenario. Entering this week, we have had 7 teams in NFL history that have played in London and then returned to America to play the following week. In those 7 games, the opponent of those teams has gone over their team total 6 times. 6-1 to the over on the team totals. All right, so what does that mean? Last week, we saw the Vikings and the Saints. They came home from London. The Vikings played the Bears. The Bears went over their team total. The Saints played the Seahawks. Seahawks went over their team total. The defenses are gassed coming back from London. So keep an eye on the Jets team total this week. They're at Green Bay to play the Packers. And keep an eye on the Ravens team total this week. They're in New York to take on the Giants. Bankroll Busters. Favorite segment of the week. Let's start with Friday night college football. Memphis laying 1 point at home against Houston. Incredible scenario. I got to make sure I got this right. I have all the notes in front of me. Up 26-7 with less than 13 minutes to play. You've only given up 7 points through 3 quarters. Okay, up 26-7 with less than 13 minutes to play, up 32-19 with less than 2 minutes to play. Somehow Houston decides to go on a 26-6 run to close this game. They score 2 touchdowns and get 2 extra points in the final 80 seconds of the game to win by 1. Now, that hurt a lot of people. It actually helped me. Chris the Bear Felica from ESPN College Game Day, he and I are partnered up in a last man standing contest here in Vegas. You pick one college team a week against the spread. We picked Houston. The comeback happened. I sent him text after text. I couldn't believe it. Wasn't celebrating. Guy was asleep, hibernating apparently. And when he woke up, apparently it was the greatest gift ever to wake up to, but incredible Memphis blowing that game. Number 2, Bankroll Busters, Carson Wentz. Although you know what? That's a bit unfair. Instead of Carson Wentz, me, for betting on Carson Wentz, all right? Unbelievable waste of time that game was to watch and to bet on. At home against Tennessee, down 21-17 late, you've got the ball, you're driving. Huge pass interference call on Tennessee that puts the ball on the 2-yard line with about 20 seconds to go. So you've got all 4 plays here if you manage it properly, which Wentz obviously didn't do. Incomplete, interception. And by the way, the first 2 incompletes were practically interceptions as well. The guy was trying to give the game away. There's something in his brain that tells him when he is on the precipice of success, he needs to turn the other way and immediately screw it up. Immediately. It is amazing how that guy operates. But again, my fault for betting on him. And then Bankroll Buster number 3, Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. So this is how it's going to be, Harbaugh? This is how it's going to be. Ravens up 3, about 9 minutes to go Sunday Night Football against Cincinnati. As many of you know, Baltimore was a pick I loved going into that game. All right, 4th and 1 on the Cincinnati, 5-yard line? 3-yard line, 4th and 1. Harbaugh always goes there. Go there, score the touchdown, go up 10. Worst case, Cincinnati comes down, scores, kicks the extra point. You win by 3, we push. Harbaugh turtles up and kicks the field goal to go up 6. Naturally, Cincinnati right down the field, scores the touchdown, kicks the extra point, which then sets up what we all know is going to happen. Baltimore's going to drive down. Tucker's going to hit the game-winning field goal. We're not going to cover. They're going to win by 2. If you're not going to cover or at least push, lose the game. So now I'm rooting for Cincinnati at the end of the game to get a stop, and of course they don't. Awful scenario. So 2 weeks ago, Harbaugh's going for it against the Bills. It's the right decision, but he gets a bad outcome and loses. This week, he makes the wrong decision, gets a good outcome and wins. I don't know what it's going to be like with this guy moving forward. I really don't know. I know I'm on the wrong end of all of it, apparently, but so concludes your Bankroll Busters for the week. Let's talk about Monday Night Football briefly. Thriller. Kansas City beats the Raiders 30-29. Raiders finding ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. 2 notes I want you to take away from this game. Number 1, when it comes to Kansas City, they cannot defend opposing number 1 wide receivers. Devontae Adams had a huge game last night. All right? Through 5 games, number 1 wide receivers have combined to put up the following stats against Kansas City's defense. 42 targets, 31 receptions, 455 yards, 6 touchdowns. They cannot defend opposing number 1s. Here comes Stephon Diggs this week. Mark that down. Number 2, Kansas City's defense cannot defend opposing running backs catching the ball coming out of the backfield. Josh Jacobs. Shout out Brandon Jacobs. I remember meeting him for the Super Bowl in Miami when the Saints beat the Colts. Nice guy, even though he's a Giant and I'm an Eagles fan, but that's neither here nor there. Josh Jacobs out of the backfield last night. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 39 yards. All right, Kansas City cannot defend these guys. No team in the NFL this season has given up more targets, more receptions, and more receiving yards to opposing running backs than the Chiefs. And that's not an anomaly. They were top 5 in all those categories last year. So look for that. Here comes Devin Singletary in the Buffalo backfield. We'll talk more about that later in the week, but those are 2 prop bets you got to be looking for moving forward when it comes to playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Speaking of the Raiders, welcome to Buy Low, Sell High. As I flip the page, still haven't figured out the printer. Although a lot of you on Instagram, thank you for sliding into my mentions with your recommendations. I clearly didn't put any effort into solving this problem, but I do appreciate you guys reaching out. Buy low, sell high. Buy low on the Raiders. I know it sounds ridiculous with the way they've played. They're 1-4 this season, but they're 0-4 in 1-score games. All right? Large enough sample size. Say you play 500 NFL games. You should be right around 50-50 when it comes to 1-score games. Sometimes you kick the game-winning field goal, sometimes they do. Sometimes you flame out, sometimes they do. They're already 0-4. And if a team was 4-0, we'd be saying sell them, okay? This is a sign towards regression. For the Raiders, positive regression. They can't keep finding ways to do this. Maybe they can, famous last words. But right now, they're 1-4 with a -5 point differential. Let me put that into context. Chargers, Dolphins, and Titans, all 3-2, all with point differentials of -14 or worse. Raiders 1-4, -5 point differential. I like them as a buy low. Another buy low as we go to college football and more college football throughout on this show. TCU quarterback Max Duggan is 75-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. 75-1. TCU is 5-0. They're like the darlings of college football right now. Max Duggan's offense, of which he's the quarterback, they're number 4 in the country in scoring. They put up huge numbers. They've got back-to-back games coming up at home against Oklahoma State, more on that in a bit, and against Kansas State. Those are 2 ranked opponents. They could be 7-0 with a bunch of victories over ranked opponents. 75-1, I'm not saying he wins, but you get through these 2 weeks. You got a road date with Texas later in the year. You got a home game with Baylor. I shudder to think. Stutter to think, shudder to think. Shudder to think. That's for the editing crew. Or leave it in there and hit me up in the mentions again with more advice so I can navigate my day. Eye advice, printer advice, grammatical advice, all the advice. DMs are open for advice. That's what I'm seeking. But again, back to business here. Duggan 75-1, credible price. I would take a shot on that. Sell high, USC. I know everyone loves them. Everyone's going to be all over them this week, plus the 3.5 at Utah. What are we all going to say? Utah, saw them in 2 big games. Lost at Florida, got crushed by UCLA. Both were road games. This is in Salt Lake City at elevation, lots of crowd noise. Just saying, be careful. USC's a dog here. Public's going to be all over them. They lose this game. They still got UCLA late in the year, who turns out they're apparently a juggernaut. They're on a bye this week before they get Oregon. File that one away. Selling high on USC. The People's Parlay. Again, you guys missed by just 1. Week 1, you hit 3 of 4. This week, you hit 2 of 3. Nicely done. We'll get there. I feel like we're going to get there. Okay? Here's how it works. Follow OddsShark on Twitter. Okay? We're going to send out a tweet this week just asking for your best picks of the weekend. College, pro, whatever. Put them in the comments. Whichever picks get the most likes, the 3, 4, whatever it is, we'll go ahead and we're going to turn it into a parlay. We'll announce it on the preview show later in the week. We'll announce your name, all that stuff. If you guys end up hitting, we'll send you a bunch of cool swag. So follow OddsShark on Twitter, and we'll work our way there. As we work our way here to key line moves, some of the big moves that have taken place this week in the NFL and college football worlds. Let's start with the Green Bay Packers. Opened 8 against the Jets. That's down to 7. Remember, coming back from London, okay? Jets apparently look a little bit better than we expected. Packers offense, that's a lot of points to cover. Remember trying to cover 9.5 at home against New England? That didn't work. Jets are going to come in. I'm not saying bet the Jets, but from 8 to 7, that's a key move. Throwing it out there. Buffalo Bills, we're laying 1 on the road in Kansas City this Sunday, AFC Championship game rematch, or no, championship game from a couple years ago, but divisional round last year. That game last year was awesome. Not for my family. I married in the Bills Mafia. It was not a pleasant place to be when all that went down. Some of them are actually here right now, so I'm going to drop my tone and I'm not going to get all hyped up about this game just yet. I will say the Bills went from -1 to -3. Laying 3 at Arrowhead. And Patrick Mahomes, this is going to be the first time in history he's been a home dog. More on that game later in the week. And now we can bring the tone back up because we're not talking about anything that would offend anybody. And Clemson, Here we go again with Florida State, right? Same thing as last week. Clemson opens -5 at Florida State, down to 3.5. Seminole money again. We talked about this last week. It's like, how do you back the Seminoles? They find ways to lose games, but same thing. Florida State money last week, they were at NC State. NC State wins, but I think it was by 1 or 2 points. They did not cover the spread. Now, here's Florida State hosting Clemson. Money coming in on the Seminoles. That Clemson defense can play. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be betting on Florida State with the way they try to lose games, but there's something to it with them. So just, do what you can with the information. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just here to tell you how crazy it is. I'm not actually making it crazy. College football. We touched on it a little bit. Our college football storyline of the week, real simple. Big games everywhere. Finally, after a few weeks of hit or miss, big games everywhere. Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan, Penn State, TCU, Oklahoma State, USC, and Utah. We even got Syracuse, NC State. Those two teams are ranked. Big games everywhere. We're going to rip through a few real quick. Alabama opened 8, down to 7.5 against Tennessee. I don't know how you back Alabama not knowing who's the quarterback. If it's Bryce Young, have at it. But if it's the backup, I made the huge mistake with him last week. He's not ready. Okay, maybe he'll be a good quarterback one day. He is not ready. 2 huge fumbles in that game. Looks uncertain in the pocket. They don't want him throwing the ball. We're talking about covering a big number against a high-powered offense. If it's the backup, be careful. Michigan opened 7, still 7 against Penn State. Penn State's had 2 weeks to get ready for that game. I don't know what to do. I'm a Penn State grad. This one's hurting my mind. I don't like Michigan. I don't like Harbaugh. I don't like the other Harbaugh. I don't like any of the Harbaughs right now. Any of them. I'd look to the under here. Money coming in on the over. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. TCU from -2 up to 3.5 against Oklahoma State. TCU, the revenge game at SMU for Sonny Dykes, followed by the Oklahoma game, followed by Kansas on the road for College Game Day. It's like big game every week for these guys. Are they going to run out of gas? Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy in these spots tends to make magic happen. I don't know, tough one for me. We'll talk about it in the preview later in the week. And then finally, Utah from -4 to -3.5 against USC. This game is interesting. When it goes up to 4 or any higher, obviously you have a lot of money coming in from sharp groups on USC, but when it was down at 3, you had sharp money coming in on Utah. It's groups are opposed on this game. It's been going back and forth. Fascinating from a betting perspective. Fascinating that all of you have stuck through this despite having to look at this the entire time. I love you all. I love you all very much. Check out everything we're doing over at OddsShark. Love to have you on the website. Lots of great content to get you set for the week. Parlay calculator is something I use every day to make sure I'm pricing all of my parlay action accurately, converting to odds to see if I'm making good bets. You should get in the habit of that too. We'll talk more about that later. Have a great week. We'll catch you later for the preview show.